George and Sandra were deeply in love. Everyone admired their sweet relationship. They had been married for less than a year. George wanted nothing but the best for his beloved wife, ensuring that she was always happy and content. They shared both good and bad times. After work, George went straight home to be with his beloved wife. And Sandra, always wanting to make her husband's life easier, would have a delicious meal waiting for him on the table. In the evenings, they watched TV together and had fun before going to bed. Their marriage was what everyone dreamed of. George loved Sandra dearly and thanked God for sending him such a beautiful gift. Their romance was the envy of everyone around them. They never fought or quarreled. They were each other's advisors and solved their problems without involving anyone else. George was a successful project manager working on a project in Allen Limited. The project had a tight deadline, and George had promised to meet it. He worked extra hours to make sure everything was completed on time. This meant he started coming home late. One evening, as they were about to go to bed, George said, "Honey, I have a project that's almost due. I need to work extra hours for the next 3 months. Please bear with me." Sandra smiled and replied, "No problem, my dear. I understand. We need the money, especially since I'm not working yet, and you're the only one providing for us." George kissed her and said, "Thank you, my wife. You are so understanding. I thank God every day for giving me such a compassionate wife, a friend, a lover, a companion, a cook, and a caregiver. I am super grateful." The couple embraced. George started coming home late most nights, but this wasn't a problem because Sandra understood. She would cover his food on the table and be asleep by the time he got home to eat, shower, and go to bed. Sandra was a beautiful woman with a perfect figure. She was also smart and had graduated as one of the top students. It was no surprise that George married her quickly, not wanting to lose her to another man. She had been applying for jobs but hadn't found one yet, so she was a full-time housewife. She took care of the home and cooked meals for George, which she did effortlessly out of love. Her best friend from school, Tina, lived a few miles away and worked at an insurance company. Tina wasn't married yet. Sandra and Tina had been best friends for a long time, and Tina was Sandra's chief bridesmaid at her wedding. When Sandra was bored at home, she would visit Tina at her work or house before going home. Since George started coming home late, Sandra spent more time with Tina. One day, while doing laundry, Sandra found a lipstick stain on George's shirt. She couldn't hold back her tears. "So George is cheating on me," she cried. "All those late nights, he was with another woman. The evidence is so clear." She called Tina, who noticed something was wrong, and asked, "Sandra, you sound different. Is everything okay?" Sandra tried to hide it, but couldn't and started crying. "George is cheating on me." Tina replied, "Why, where, how? I'm so sorry, my friend. Let me come over to see you." After work, Tina rushed to Sandra's house. Sandra showed her the shirt and said, "Isn't this another woman's lipstick on my husband's shirt?" Tina looked at it and said, "My friend, this is not concrete evidence of cheating. George loves you so much. I know for sure he cannot cheat. When he comes home, ask him. I know he is an understanding man. He will explain everything." Sandra said, "No, he is cheating. Why else is he coming home so late? He has been lying to me about the project. I don't think that's true." Tina hugged her friend and said, "Take it easy. Just ask him." When George came home, there was no food on the table as usual. He was surprised but thought maybe Sandra was tired. This continued for several days. George was puzzled by Sandra's change in behavior but decided to ignore it, thinking she would come around. One day, as George was driving home after another long day of work, George decided to stop by a perfume shop. He wanted to surprise his wife with a gift, hoping to make up for all the time he'd been spending on his project. As he entered the shop, he asked the salesperson to show him their selection of feminine fragrances. George took his time, finally settling on a perfume he knew his wife would love. To ensure that the fragrance was to his liking, the shopkeeper dabbed a little bit of it on his shirt. George was delighted with his choice of perfume and knew Sandra would be too. But that night, he decided to keep the gift a secret, leaving it in his car for another day. When he arrived home, he was surprised to find that his wife hadn't prepared him a meal. Upon stepping into the house, George noticed that the table was empty, and the scent of home-cooked food was nowhere to be found. Wondering about this unusual absence, he asked Sandra, "My love, why is there no food today? Is something wrong?" Sandra, who was usually quick to provide a warm meal and a loving smile, replied, "My dear, I'm sorry. I haven't been feeling well today, so I wasn't able to prepare a meal for you." Understanding his wife's illness, George sought to ease her worries and provide reassurance. With a gentle voice, he comforted her, saying, "My love, please don't worry. You must take the time you need to rest and recover. I'm happy to take care of myself until you're feeling better. Your health is what matters most." George understood and thought she would start cooking again once she got better. Sandra's decision to withhold her cooking was a deliberate attempt to communicate her feelings without having to explicitly confront George about what was bothering her. The next day, Sandra was doing laundry and saw George's shirt. She picked up the shirt and smelled it. She noticed that there was a different perfume on it. It smelled like a woman's perfume. Sandra thought, "This is not my husband's perfume. Maybe he is hugging or kissing another woman. Maybe he is cheating on me." She thought, "This is a woman's perfume." The next day, Sandra devised a plan with her friend Tina to test George's faithfulness. Initially, Tina was reluctant, but she eventually agreed when Sandra insisted. Sandra pleaded, "Please, Tina, help me test my husband. I need to know if he truly loves me like he says. You're my best friend and I trust you to be honest with me." Tina tried to dissuade Sandra from going through with the plan, saying, "No, Sandra, this isn't the best way to handle this. Please reconsider." But Sandra was determined, replying, "No, Tina, I've already made up my mind. This is the only way to know for sure. I trust you, my best friend. I know you wouldn't hurt me, and will always tell me the truth." Tina reluctantly agreed, saying, "All right, Sandra, I will do it if that's what you want." After agreeing to Sandra's request, Tina returned home and began to contemplate the task at hand. She was hesitant, as she did not want to cause harm to her friend, or damage the trust between them, but she also wanted to bring Sandra the clarity and reassurance she sought. "Sandra is my best friend. I know how much this means to her," Tina thought to herself. "Even though I'm uneasy about this, I need to do it for her happiness. I've decided to go through with it." With a heavy heart, Tina steeled herself to carry out her friend's request. Tina began her mission to watch George's every move, carefully tailing him to gather information about his daily routine. She observed where he worked, his patterns after work, and more. Sandra, eager to know the outcome, kept in close contact with her friend, providing details about George's whereabouts whenever she could. After each excursion, Tina would return to Sandra with updates, divulging all the information she had gathered. One evening, George returned home and spoke with his wife, Sandra. "Sandra, I'm concerned about Tina. She's been acting strange lately, trying to get close to me. I think she's trying to seduce me, but I love you and only you. Please be careful around her." Sandra listened attentively and responded, "Thank you for sharing your concerns, George. I will be cautious around her. Don't worry, I trust you." Despite this, Tina continued her assignment. George's relationship with Sandra became strained due to the stress of his project and the way Tina treated him lately. George wasn't getting the same love from Sandra. He started falling for Tina. He began to find solace in the attention of Tina, who had been deliberately spending more time with him. Initially, Tina's intentions were purely to gather information, but as the days passed, she found herself growing increasingly drawn to George. George, too, felt himself warming to Tina's charms, and their friendship developed into something more intimate. She cooked his favorite meals, and George started visiting her after work to eat before going home, knowing Sandra had stopped preparing his meals. Gradually, things changed. Tina stopped updating Sandra on what was happening. George acted differently around Sandra, and when she asked Tina for information, Tina would say she was still working on it. Sandra started suspecting something was wrong, but couldn't figure out what exactly. One day, George exploded with rage, his frustration with the marriage finally reaching a breaking point. "I've had enough," he shouted. I'm filing for divorce. My lawyers will be here tomorrow with the papers for you to sign. You're not the woman I married anymore. You stopped cooking for me and stopped showing me love. I'm in love with Tina now. She respects and honors me, makes me happy, and cooks for me. She even makes better meals than you. This marriage is over." With tears streaming down her face, Sandra was utterly stunned by George's outburst. How could Tina do this to me, she thought. This was all a trap to see if George was cheating. It's not fair. Sandra pleaded with George, "Please, my husband, don't do this. I still love you. I promise I'll do better. Please forgive me." George, blinded by his anger and infatuation with Tina, turned away, saying, "No, Sandra, it's too late. You had your chance. There are no more chances. You've wasted all of them. You don't treat me like a human being, let alone your husband. You treat me badly. Everything about you makes me angry, and it's your fault. I've asked you over and over what's wrong, but you won't tell me. Whenever I try to talk to you, you just ignore me. I've found love with Tina. She's the woman for me. I love her, and she loves me too." In the end, George divorced Sandra and married his newfound love, Tina.